I do. In the early 1950s, Longton was a bit different than it is now. It was black for a start. Everything in Longton was black. Buildings, churches, footpaths. But tell you what, there was a lot more to out Longton in them days. Wedge's Cafe, we used to go with your basin. Remember? Out Cameo Dancehall, we used to go busting lips on a Saturday night. You were there? You're not from Blatant, are you? That's all right then. Oh, that's all right then. Oh, lad from Blatant threw me downstairs there one night. And then there was that Piggott, and some tatters got in there. A bit like a prep school for the hut. Does Big Alice Turpin never get any, you know? Big Alice. I had a fit of violence in here once, they nosed. I flattened 3 jippos and did 150 quid's worth of damage. It was raw-boned and nasty, was Big Alice. He used to drink pints and tack snuff. Well, them days, they nosed, I used to live in a terraced house in Longton. Just me and me mother they was. Me dad was Jed, does say. And living next door to us was our Geandad Piggott and his missus. Well, folks say to me, I just lived next door to him for 10 years without committing murder. Well, I don't know. I come close to it a couple of times. Any road. This particular time, our Geandad Piggott got his son involved in this job with Club Paper Jack. It went along after the great train robbery. And him and Club Paper Jack were doing a bit of self-analysis in the pub one night. Jack says they know, me and they are mugs. I says they up in court next week, and I've got a fine pay off, and what have we got show for it? A bit of copper piping has fetched 3 quid. And these here bloody train robbers do one job and then got enough money to last them the rest of their lives. This is it, say. Our Geandad Piggott would pinch out. So would Club Paper Jack. But neither on them were what you'd call public enemy number 1. They were always in trouble, but it was always for petty things, say. I mean, Club Paper Jack could do out for money by work. Don't let him in. There's a little thick-set bloke, as you say, walking around Longton with 2 whippets. And he used to wear a filthy red tam with badges around it. And he got a patch over one eye. And he could strip lead eye to derelict eyes. He's faster than Potter's demolition on Time and Eighth. I got 9 kids, 3 ferrets, 2 whippets, an Osation bitch, a loft full of pigeons, and last job I had was milk monitor. Of course, him and our Geandad Piggott went peas out of the same pod. And Club Paper Jack says, that's it, any road, I'm going to plan a big job. Out with me or what? Our Geandad says, course I'm with thee. Well, it took Club Paper Jack 3 weeks think it out. Then I come to our Geandad one night. I says, I've got summit. I says, just know that tobacconist where they sell all them expensive lighters and such. Well, I says, there's a chewing gum machine on the wall outside. I says, and I've seen stacks of kids fading money into it. I says, the only thin metal he knows. I says, all this got to do is jemmy one little lock, and all the front comes off. Couldn't be easier. Well, they planned it all right. And Jack says, now ale that night. Split second timing, that's the answer. And he rode, big night come, and our Geandad had got his old mac on, and Club Paper Jack was wearing a pinstripe suit and a balaclava. I looked a bit like Al Capone. Anyway, 2 o'clock in the morning, they went into action. Our Geandad Piggott kept watch, while Club Paper Jack gave it a bit of jammy. And next minute, crack, and old front come off. Jack says, it's off. Old money should be here and the guts on it. Bring that suitcase. Well, I starts cossing then. Our Geandad says, how much is they? Jack says, 7p. Well, they looked at one another. Jack says, that's so on it. They had another stiver in that machine. I says, they stick their finger up that money hole, say if they can find any. So our Grandad starts ferreting around. They and the bloody chewing gum machine. Big job, he says. I bet there's never more than 6 bob in it when it's full. Well, all of a sudden, hell broke loose. There was a bloody great klaxon kicked in, right over top on him, and it did just shatter the still night air, I tell thee. Well, Club Paper Jack nearly whittled him, son. And now Grandad Piggott nearly broke his finger trying to get it out of this penny hole. Well, where these bobbies come from, neither on them knew. But next minute, there was 5 after Club Paper Jack, 4 after our Grandad, and 2 police cars blocked straight. Our Grandad Piggott tried to get a manhole cover up break, couldn't he? That's right, The next second they'd got him. Well, Club Paper Jack had a real rough time. 2 bobbies fanged out on him, gelled his head on a gas lamp, then fell on him. Half an hour later, both on him went in charge of him at Longton police station. Jack says, I can't understand it. I says, it's a bloody sensitive burglar alarm. It must be. Our Grandad says, you give it too much, Jamie, that's what you did. So anywho, they were in charge, kept in overnight, and then morning they let him go. Oh, for bloody 7pence, our Grandad says. 7pence, that's another fine coming up. Well, I got a bad taste in his mouth, our Grandad had. But it wasn't as bad as the taste I had when it read paper that night. Turned out as it one of them as had set burglar alarm off. Well, them 2 had been breaking into the tobacconist's chewing gum machine. Somebody else had been breaking into his warehouse. And they got away with 2,500 quid's worth of cigarettes and cigars. Scot-free. That's how it goes, isn't it? Our Grandad Piggott had only got 1 grandchild, and that was their Norma's lad, Peter. And however he grew up into a respectable young man, I'll never know. Our Grandad Piggott used to be vile to him. I taught him how breaking a gas meter when I was 9. Club Paper Jack treated his ferrets better than our Grandad Piggott treated Peter. When I was little, Peter always used to refer to him son as it, and I'd come up his grandma and granddad's full of joy as a childhood. Play with it, Grandad, I'd say. Give it a ride on the back. Go on, Grandad, give it a ride. And our Grandad would lather him up the ear hole, and I'd run through the ice screaming his head off. And I wouldn't let him go nowhere near the pantry. You know what little lads are like for biscuits? Peter would say, can it have a biscuit, Grandad? It's ever so hungry. And our Grandad Piggott would get him a custard cream full of mustard. Nasty little things like that I'd do. He's a little guts, our Grandad would say, and he's lippy. And I don't have no chelp off kids his age. Well, I could have understood it if Peter was cheeky, but he wasn't. I absolutely idolised our Grandad Piggott. One day they noticed they were walking past a fruit shop. Our Grandad says, here lad, say them oranges there. Go and put 6 in this carrier bag. I'll wait for you up the road. Of course, lad starts helping him, saying he didn't know he was doing wrong. Well, this bloke come out. He says, what doing, son? Peter says it's getting its Grandad some oranges. Fruitman says, has got any money? Peter says, no, that's they. And orange number 6 went in his bag. I says, I think my and they better go say a bobby, this bloke did. And I found out to Peter with the scruff of the neck. No, mister, please. Dunna take it to Bobby. Please, mister, dunna. Peter shouted. And I turned round and bit this bloke's thumb. I let him go, this bloke did. Then Peter was off like a shot with this bloke alpha leather after him. I spent 3 hours hiding up a sewer pipe, Peter did. Then I had to find his own road one. His Grandad had abandoned him. I always did say. Well, the worst thing as ever happened to Peter was one time as the fair come up Box Lane, me. That's Box Lane. Well, you could say that from our straight. Tack it fair, Grandad. Go on, Grandad, tack it fair. Let it have a go on them swings and them hossies. No, Piggott says, why don't you take the lad? You never treat him to nout, yo, don't he? When he wants to drink a pop, you get him bloody liver soats. I don't know difference, how Grandad says. I does when he gets warm and wonders what's up with him. His missus says. Well, in the end, how'd Grandad Piggott take Peter fair? And I had to go on 2 or 3 things. Then most natural thing in the world, I wanted geek toilet. Would tack it for a wee, Grandad, I says. So how'd Grandad says, come on then, take us go back of them caravans. Well, I took Peter behind these caravans, and there was a post, and what looked like an old sack. So I lifted Peter's trouser leg up. I says, right, go on. Well, all of a sudden, there's a bloody great bang and a vivid blue flash. Peter screamed, and old Fairground was plunged into complete darkness. Old Grandad hadn't a say no those wires and cables coming from under this sack. It was main electricity point for the whole fairground. The little Peter had short-circuited it. Well, everybody started shouting and running round, and Peter was screaming the place down. I was absolutely terrified. I'd weedo down his leg. Well, old Grandad fanged out on him and got out to the road quick. I normally reckoned as I hadn't out for 4 days, it had upset him that much. As they know, Peter never forgot that. I never went near another fairground, not even when I was older. I must be the only lad as he's never been on Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Marley, I was the only lad with a Grandad as rotten as that old tup. But he was. Bad language outside Lizzie's. Like Lizzie Lockett, this one is. It took a lot to upset Lizzie Lockett next door but one to us, but this particular instance had really set her off. Hilda Aspinall at shop told me about it. They says I stirred. I says, heard what? Lizzie Lockett's going to have police on out Piggott. I says, why? What's happened? Hilda says, well, last Wednesday afternoon, Lizzie got some women's organisation members down for coffee. And they went and sitting in front room drinking coffee and talking about baking bread. And over a sudden, it says this vile language started floating in through the window. Well, Lizzie reckoned it was somebody out in the street standing under the gas lamp and they want a knife churning it out. It wasn't just ordinary swearing, it was worse than that, a lot worse. It was pit language, fish market language and bloody dockers language all held into one. With a bit more added than host. Good measure. I reckon as Judy Parker Jarvis fainted. And I swears blind as it was out Piggott. I says there's only him in the whole of North Staffordshire as could cost like that. I says any road has got police on it. I thought poor old Lizzie. Well, fortunately, it didn't happen very often as they met at Lizzie's, but when they did, I usually managed to get Pearce out of the road, shift his teeth off mantel shelf. Put a reasonable show on the host. It seemed a cruel stroke of fate as old Grandad Piggott should have a cussing session under the gas lamp that very afternoon. Lizzie had got no doubt what I was going to do. Face like thunder had got when my mother said her in the butcher's. So get him shifted. You can't stand it, old Tom. Oh no, it was him under that gas lamp, I says. This'd be a lovely neighbourhood if it wasn't for his filthy gob. I says it's every hour of the day with him. First thing in the morning, he goes banging and swearing down to the lavatory. I says it's heaven help anybody as gets in his road. I says then he's churning his language out of 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning they're on. My Pearce gonna go late for him. Now this lot. Oh no, I says. He's gone to fur this time. I says he gets a bit of ale inside him and up goes his volume knob. Rubbish he is. No but rubbish. That was real better was Lizzie. Oh, when Bobby first knocked on old Grandad's door without tuck panicked. I says it wasn't me the host. I never went nowhere near that building site. I says as regards any tales, never said none. There's been a complaint about you emitting abusive and obscene language in a public place, thereby liable to cause a breach of the peace. Well, old Grandad looked stunned at first. Then he thought, fast. I says, look, it wasn't me. It meant to sound like me, but it wasn't. I says, my mate Billy Drummond bets on horses, does say, and I had a bad run yesterday afternoon. He's a bit fast-tempered, Drummer is. I don't think what he says. Bobby says, it was not yesterday afternoon, it was Wednesday. I like straight at this, Bobby. I says it couldn't have been me then, I was in bed, bad. They could text me messages. OD Wednesday, I was bad. But Bobby had gone. Well, old Grandad come round our eyes. I says it's all right, innit? Minute somebody does something round here, everybody says it's me. Oh, says they aren't usually wrong, neither are they. Well, they were just about to charge out Grandad Piggott with this offence. And I happened being done robbing this night, and somebody knew somebody else as happened to work for the gas board. And this chap was on the club. So Grandad says, why is he on the club? You know, it's just in conversation, like. This bloke says, well, his mate was sealing a crack in a gas lamp, and I'd dropped red hot molten lead down his shirt neck. That's how they used to do it, those gas lamps. I was at the bottom of the ladder, does say. Well, all of a sudden, something clicked, and it took out Grandad Piggott till dinner time next day to track this bloke down. I says, listen, bad neck or no bad neck, they ain't coming down to the police station with me. Of course, this bloke didn't know as it was up, does say, so of course I made a statement that afternoon. And his statement read like this. I was holding the ladder for Mr. Smith, and I remember feeling excruciating pain, and I said, excuse me, Mr. Smith, you were dropping red hot lead down my neck. Will you please try to be more careful? Old Grandad says to this Bobby, I says, I suppose that's what you'd see if somebody dropped red hot lead down our shirt neck, is it? So he took him out in the wash. It wasn't old Grandad after all. Well, they wouldn't have tell him who'd complained, but they could have blamed Leslie Lockett for thinking it was him. If you heard a bark in our street, you knew there was a dog about. If you heard bad language, you knew there's old Grandad Piggott was about. It was as easy as that. Lady Constance, Potteruim. Anybody posh? You've got to be, you've got to laugh posh with this one, you know. Lady Constance Potteruim had never been to Longton, be fair. And as I got out of this big weight Jaguar without bus station, I decided as I didn't particularly want to come again. I got a student doubted us, say, as had been doing a project on potteries, and had arranged me to. Well, Lady Constance stood there waiting, and it was what you'd call an impressive figure. I was fat. I got 3 chins, a big floppy hat with ostrich feathers in it. And in her arms I got a Pekingese dog with asthma. Was cuddling it, they know, star they do. Well, just at this particular time, old Grandad Piggott was trudging up the strand on his road to the old hut. I was skint, old Grandad was. Well, I just fetched his pension, paid a fine with it, and I go by 4 bob left, say. Now, if Lady Constance hadn't have stepped off the curb, I might never have met old Grandad Piggott. Because remember these old high-heel shoes they used to wear? I got a pair of these on, say, and the heel went down the grid. Easy solved, you might think. But when they'd 16 stone and tied up for like 13 stone, you know, stole like this, didn't see easy bend down, say. Oh, blast! Lady Constance says. Then I spotted out Grandad. I didn't particularly like the cut on him, but I was the only one at hand just at that time. Old Grandad had stopped, and I was grinning at Lady Constance. Hey, my man, come here. So old Grandad sidled over and I spat in the grid. It missed Lady Constance's shoe by about 1/2 inch. Get my shoe out of this grid. Old Grandad says, Missus, get knotted. I demand that you help me. Old Grandad says, I don't reckon us late in a position demand out, I don't know. I says, there's an old lot as lives down that grid and it's got bloody teeth on it like wood chairs. I says, what's it worth? Get the height. Lady Constance stuck down that grid probably meant as though Tuck could spend half an hour in the bokies with a bit of luck. I'll give you 5 shillings. No good. 5 shillings, not enough. Listen, missus, I says, I know the arse out. If I was stuck down a bloody grid, they was to help me. I says, when you day, the name will be in the paper with a 5-figure Weller side on it. I says, when I go, ours all leaves a gas bill, and my name on will have it through if I'm lucky. I says, when I'm dead, they'll chuck me up that bunk. And everybody in the street will have a party. I says, it's going to cost like 10 quid, go out to that grid, missus. Well, Lady Constance went a dark shade of purple. And next thing, old Piggott had an asthma attack. Old Grandad Piggott had got trump card, and both on them knew it. So Lady Constance fumbled in a bag, ripped 2 fivers off a roll and get him in. So I stuffed him in his behind pocket. I says, right, stop there a minute. I'm going to borrow a crowbar out of that shop. And Lady Constance had no choice but stop there. So he comes back with this crowbar and an hammer. I says, right, out still, I'll be out in a minute. And he starts jabbing away at the seal, trying to dislodge it. Then he got down on his hands and knees and tried to dislodge it with his fingers. But that's when this Piggott took an hand in it. It had made its mind up from the start as how Grandad Piggott was a bad lot. And it had decided now as I was trying to attack its mistress. So it started yapping and struggling. Oh, Wong Pao, do keep still. But Wong Pao wouldn't have kept still. It struggled out to Lady Constance's arms and dropped on out Grandad's shoulder. Then it sunk his teeth in his left ear. They're nasty, the house, them pigs are. Well, old Grandad let out the yells they had all Longton. And her elder were crossing blue murder. But this pig wouldn't let go. It hung on to old Grandad's ear and it mauled it and shook it like as if it was a rot. I let out at it then with this hammer. But all I did was succeed in splitting a flagstone. Growled him over then, this pig did, and it was growling and snarling like hell. Then it dragged his ear into the gutter, so I had to go with it. Well, in then, somebody come out to the shop with a bucket of weights and let drive. Lady Constance says, you've upset my Wong Pao's delicate little system. She's highly strung, you know. I says, I'll upset its system if I catch out on it. I'll upset its bloody life. You throw a hammer at her. They used to throw the bloody hammer if it's done at they, well, it's done at me. I says, I say me, eh? I had to go hospital with his ear, you know, so Grandad did. Lady Constance went back one pretty fast when I got her foot out of that grid. I didn't wait for a daughter. I was more concerned about the peak. I knowed as if old Grandad Piggott had got out on it, I'd have killed it. I would have done a no. Anyway, they'll say thee.
Longton, great. Lean end and neck end, they call it. They call it neck end and lean end, where the church is.
How at?
I'm all right at night.
Tell me about neck end.
Well, neck end is all in the wall. On a Friday night, it was just like coming into a cloud of smoke. And it was one.
Nuke. And double OK. They called it Nuke. I lived along there in Nuke 41 years, till they took me to Bladen at a bungalow.
There'd been more pubs knocked down in Longton than enough. One time there was more pubs in Longton than dwelling houses. The Old Hut, Clock, Waterloo, Shamrock, Bridge Inn, Red House, Robin Hood, Gardens at the top of Daisy Bank, Lord John. There's more pubs along the in Commerce Street. You know where Commerce Street is, you got where the bus station is. There's more pubs in there than enough. There's more that than telling. Along ends of the road, there was more pubs on Saturday night places and shops than dwelling houses. How did they live? How did they live? They used to have it on slate.
The bots of Dalek takes some doing, you know. But I find it's easy, you know. Easy. I was working down down Stoke not long ago, and a bloke come up to us like, says, how do you get to Hanley? Well, from where our situation like, I says, well, best thing to do is go along road here, turn left at traffic lights, go up Limekiln Bonk. Well, he said to me like, Limekiln Bonk? What's that? I says, it's that bank. I said, that bonk up there, like. Is that the name of it? Limekiln Bonk? I says, I says, as far as I know, it's been called Limekiln Bonk. I mean, I'm only 21. But, you know, he was just stunned more or less because he didn't come from down this area.
I do! How Grandad Piggott and his missus won what you'd call Darby and Joan. They fell out on average 5 times a week. But the worst time as I ever remember was once when they pinched the savings. Nana Piggott used to have a little old tin with the money in, as I kept raked at the back of the pantry. And this particular time I was saving up for a new coat for the winter. Of course, our Grandad had been in the pantry for summer or other, and I'd come across this tin. And when his missus got back from shopping, tin was on the floor empty, and I'd gone out. His missus come round our eyes. Oh, I'm going to kill that old pig when he comes back. 7 months savings he's had. 12 quid there was in that tin. I says, he's turning it into ale now. But when he comes home, I'm going to turn him into mincemeat. Then I'm leaving him, for good. I says, I've had 46 years of his ale and filthy temper, and I'm having the mower. Anyhow, when I went back, I said her out in the shed. And I went in the ice carrying a 4-foot long sledge on my shaft. I says to our old lady, there's going to be some trouble round there. I said his missus go off down the road like a racehorse. I thought I'd better go round. Well, our Grandad was just lugging him out from under the table when I went in. Well, this rumble started deep down in his belly somewhere, and it finished up in the best mouth full of bad language I've ever heard. Where is he? Oh, I'm going to splatter here from here to Fenton, he says. Has gone, has left there, I told him. There's a note for you on the shelf there. I says, what's it say? I says, it says, go to hell and tuck the filthy vest and pants with thee. I says, you've asked for it, haven't you? I said, that'll teach the pinch of savings. They had that coming to the a long time, they asked. So I stood him up and steadied him. I says, they wouldn't need no lights on tonight. They've got 150 watt ear hole. I says, I can say two of everything. I says, I wonder they could say out to two. I says, it'd put a good man in a wooden box to swipe like that would. Well, I hadn't got many assets out, Grandad, hadn't he? But one of them was a bullet-hard yed. I says, so it's gone, has he? I says, it's gone. I says, well, there can stay gone. I says, if he comes through that bloody double, it's Jed. I says, I don't need he'll look after me. Well, I come out to the road then, I did. I thought I'll let him sort him some night. Well, next 2 hours I was banging around, and I was upstairs and down. And everything of his missus went out and in the bin. Everything as had left I slung out. Then I made fire up, made him send a cup of tea, and I lit a fag. It'd sobered him up if it had done nought else. Then I found this tin of air lacquer. I'm having no tears in here, he says. And I chucked it back at the fire. Well, just know what happens when you chuck a 3 parts full tin of air lacquer on fire. Everywhere was quiet, and all of a sudden, there was a bloody great woof. Full well heat went off. Away heard him fanfare out, and Pansador went till like a cannon going off. I says to our old lady, I'm getting lined. He's either blown him sen up, set him sen on fire, or done something. I go in the living room, and they's never seen such a mess in all their life. About a ton and a half of soot had come down the chimney, and everything was just pitch black. All you could say our old Grandad was the whites of his eyes. They looked like something off a marmalade jar. The first thing I had to do was get coal back in the grate, else the ice was going to go up, there was no certain. Then Pierce Lockett come round. What's up? What's happened? I says, get a coal shovel, Pierce, and get this burning coal off the carpet. I took out Grandad outside, and I spent the next 10 minutes coughing like hell and turning bad language out. I says, I left that for me, did the most. I want to get shut him, eh? It's tried bloody payson, maybe fair now, the knows. I says, look, just hush. Go upstairs and get this hand cleaned up if it's possible. I was in a bit of a mess, how Grandad was. His eyebrows had gone. There's a stuck out and under his nose had gone. And I was covered from head to foot in soot. It taught them both a lesson, that did, they knowst. Next time they fell out, I left sledgehammer shaft in the shed, and they stuck to plates and ornaments. Right, just see how Grandad Piggott was in a tight spot and no mistake. Him and Billy Drummond had got some lead dust, say, and Bobby had stopped him on the road to the scrapyard. Drummer was a little whippet man from Bentalay, and he was about as honest as Legs Diamond. Anyway, this Bobby says, I seem to know your face. How Grandad says, who now? Just know me. Must be somebody as looks like me. I've got 6 brothers and they all look like me. Bobby says, where have you had that lead from? How Grandad says, bought it off a bloke as comes in Tommy Dawkins' pub. I know he drum. Drummer says, oh, definite, right, what he says. Bobby says, well, this stuff matches the description of that stuff that went out of that contractor's store. He says, not only that, there was a lot of damage done, wasn't there? They've got to have a whole new front on that store, and it's going to cost over £300. How Grandad says, well, I don't know now to bite that. Like I see why boat this off a bloke as comes in Tommy Dawkins' pub. Dinner with Drum. Drummer says, definite. Bobby says, you've got nothing to worry about then, have you? I says, tell you what, we're just wagging it down to the station to clear things up, eh? We'll just get it checked out, then you can take it to the scrapyard. I was talking to him, son. Billy Drummond could run, and I did just go up that road. Bobby stood no chance of catching him, and I knowed it. But I might have been able to catch out Grandad Piggott. I'd gone down entry out Grandad had, and Bobby went hell for leather after him. Well, Bobby lost a few vital seconds at the bottom of the entry, deciding which road the top had gone. And that was always how Grandad needed. I shot down these backs, round the corner, and into what looked like a school. I went across what looked like a playground and through a door. And sure enough, it was a school, a nursery school. And how Grandad was in the cloakroom. Well, all of a sudden, I noticed this little girl standing up a corner, sucking a thumb and staring at him. So, of course, how Grandad tried to appear calm. Hello, little girl, I says. What's your name? Cynthia, little girl says. I've been thick. That's why I'm out here in case I'm thick again. How old are you, Cynthia? How Grandad says, listening out for the Bobby. 4, little girl says. Are you Santa Claus? Sort of, how Grandad says. Well, that Bobby was by the dustbins. I could hear him moving them round. Tell me a story, Mr. Santa Claus, little girl says. Tell me a story, else I'll cry and scream. Well, that put him in a spot. Now, don't scream, I says. I'll tell you a story. For that little wench screamed. Bobby had come through that door like a Sherman tank. Well, telling kids stories one of our Grandad's strong point, but he got by done. So I went and sat by this little girl, and I racked his brains. Oh, no one, I says. The little girl was still sucking her thumb, and had never taken her eyes off him. I says, once upon a time, there was a little checking code, Chicken Licken. I says, and one day, a lump on me fell off some scaffolding in it, Chicken Licken, top of the head. It was an acorn! It was an acorn! Little girl says, jumping up and down. Oh, that's it, how Grandad says. It's all coming back to me now. Well, just then, Bobby woke past the window, and how Grandad broke out in a cold sweat. I said, once upon a time, there was a little checking code, Chicken Licken. And one day, an acorn fell off a tree, and it hit Chicken Licken top of the head. Well, Chicken Licken thought the sky had fell in. So I went off to tell the king, does say, and on his road I met Jenny Lenny. Little girl starts jumping up and down again. It was Annie Lenny! It was Annie Lenny, he says. All right, how Grandad says, watching the cloakroom window. I was just testing you. Any rate up, I says. Both on and went tell the king about this lump on me, acorn, like. did they meet? Little girl says. Well, how Grandad Piggott hadn't got a clue. I couldn't remember anymore. Camel Gamel, I says. Straight off top of his head it was. And this little wench let out to scream like something out of horror film. And how Grandad Piggott stood no chance. I was sitting next to this little wench, and Bobby come through the outside door, and teacher come through the other one. How Grandad says, "Hey up, I've got a disease." It didn't make no difference. They'd got him, hand on each shoulder, but not for long. Next second, how Grandad Piggott was through the classroom, out through the door, and off down the road. And all Bobby and teacher had got was a dirty old coat hanging with shoulders. When they got outside, they wanted a sign on him. All there was a rubber skid mark where he'd turned the corner. I lay low for a few days after that, how Grandad did. I was on about Chicken Licken. I was a bit like Brock Badger for the next week. I only come out at night. Cyril Swettenham, as used to live along our street, was a grand lad, but I was a bit slow. I was about 30, Cyril was, and I was a bachelor, and I used to live with his mother next door to Hilda Aspinall's shop. And I used to talk like this, you know. I was a fairly thick-set youth, and I used to work on a pot bunk. I was a labourer's labourer. I wouldn't have no deal with women, you know, Cyril, wouldn't he? And I never went out only Tommy Dawkins' pub. Well, me and the lads tried to get him come dancing down to Cameo once or twice, but I wouldn't. I thought you were trying to make fun on him. I was a bloke of habit, was Cyril. I went work, I come one, and every Tuesday night without fail, I went down to the pub for a game of dominoes. I sat in the same seat, and Cyril didn't like it one bit if I had to sit somewhere else. Well, Tommy Dawkins had this one-armed bandit put in. And of course, all the local thieves converged on it for say how it worked, and say if they could find out a load of twist in it. Well, there was old Grandad Piggott, Club Paper Jack, and Jonah from Foley, just at this particular time. And they tried putting out halfpennies in, weshers, but wouldn't have them. Well, up Cyril's corner where I used to sit, this new electric socket had appeared with 2 plugs in it. So of course Cyril thought, now what can that be to? And I started looking around and say what was new in the place, see? Well, like I tell you, this Cyril was a bit slow, and it never dawned on him as it might be to the one-armed bandit. So he starts messing about with this socket, Cyril did, and I switched it off, say if out outed. Well, something did out it. A little Guinness sign in the window went out. Well, that explained one of the plugs, and then this little bout of costume broke out with one-armed bandit. Well, Jonah stuck his foot in it, Cyril switched on, and on come the one-armed bandit. I still hadn't fathomed out what this plug was to. I switched off again, and Club Paper Jack nearly went through the roof. I says, 3 oranges come up, look, then it's bloody gone out again. I kicked 7 bells out on it, Club Paper Jack did, but it didn't come back on. Now Grandad says, now good, dead as a jippo's bottom lip. Well, in the meantime, Jonah was trying to trace the flex, and it didn't take him long to trace it to where Cyril was. I says to Cyril, so you been messing about with that switch? Cyril says, what fleet got to do with they? How Grandad come over then. I says, it's they, is it? Well, Cyril didn't like how Grandad Piggott. How Grandad had tried to take advantage on him a time or two, just say. I says, they shut the gob and mind their own business. Well, next minute, how Grandad had got out of Cyril and they were having a right good old scuffle. Well, Tommy Dawkins made a put for come round the bar and part him, but it wasn't necessary. Somebody beat him to it. They knocked Big Ali's terpenes halo with us, say. Big Alice was about 16 stone and had been bingo and code in the pub for a drink on a road one. He used to drink pints, Alice had, and when Cyril knocked the best part of the full an hour, Big Alice cut up rough. I fanged out to Cyril with one hand, out Grandad with the other, and I gelled the heads together as hard as I could. Out Grandad spun off one road and measured his length on the floor, and Cyril sat in the far. Next minute I was through the door with his trousers behind smouldering. Well, Club Paper Jack and Jonah had gone. They'd seen Big Ali's terping with a monk on a foe, and they were having none. Well, Tommy Dawkins barred out Grandad out that night, again. And Cyril Swettenham woke to work for the next 3 days. It was no use going on his motorbike, I couldn't have sit on the seat. I says to me, "Oh, son, her upset all his burping again." I says, "Now, Cyril, they keep eye to the road, mate. It's too big for they." Well, Cyril didn't mess about with Tommy Dawkins' plugs again, neither. I still want to show what that other plug was to, though. Like I said, Cyril Swettenham was a bit slow. Every year, all the old folks that lived round about our street used to go on a bus trip from Tommy Dawkins' pub. They used to run a Boster every week, and this swipe, yeah, here's what a Boster is. This is swipe, say, and this swipe used to pay for the old folks' bus trip, and usually they used to pay enough over for buying a bag of coal at Christmas. Well, every year they went somewhere different, and every year old Grandad Piggott managed to get him sent in trouble. But funniest thing as ever happened was one year as they went to London. Well, old Grandad sat on the back seat with Person Leslie Lockett and old Arthur Donkin and his missus. And they'd had a grand day. They'd had a good tour around London, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And the bus pulled up at this little tea shop. You know, it's one of these quaint little places it was. Little finger up in there, they noticed. And as a special treat, the owner had put on cherry rouse for afters. And that's where the first upset broke out. Old Grandad Piggott liked cherries, and I was leathering this cherry roast down him. Now, old Grandad was good at spitting cherry stones. I was a crack shot. And they could steer. I was spitting them 10 yards across this room, and I was landing them in a litter bin. And the only time I missed was when somebody got in the road. There's one of these old colonel-type blokes on the bus, they know, with a big handlebar moustache. I was a friend of the landlord, Tommy Dawkins, and I just leaned back and patted his belly. "Bloody gods, you," I says. Next thing, smack. A bloody cherry stone hit him straight in the ear hole. And his deaf aid went off like a burglar alarm. Hast ever heard of deaf aid when you upset the mechanism? Beep! It was going. And I was tearing at his ear hole. I didn't know what took out first, the hearing aid or the cherry stone. I threw this hearing aid on the table and I stormed across. I says, "I'll cut your bloody whiskers off." Old Grandad Piggott got up, took his teeth out. I says, "Try it." Well, next minute, Bill Henshaw was between them. "Sit down, pair on you." "He smashed my bloody hearing aid." Old Grandad says he should have got the bloody daft head in the road then, shush. Any road, they went to Kew Gardens for an hour after that. Then on the road back, driver took them to their social club. And when the old folks got back on the bus at 10:08, old Grandad Piggott was drunk. And I flopped down on the back seat like an old sack of spuds. Next minute I was snoring. Sounds as if somebody got a pneumatic drill up the corner, they know. Well, just outside London, before the bus got onto them one, driver stopped at these toilets for let everybody go, does say. And everybody went, apart from old Grandad Piggott. Pierce Lockett woke him up. I says, "'Swan good toilet for you, there?" Well, old Grandad grunted, swore, adjusted his cargo rail, banged his head on the window, swore again and went back sleep. So Pierce says to hell with him. The bus was doing 60 up middle lane of them one when old Grandad woke up. "Where are we?" "You tell that driver stop a minute, I'm busting." Pierce Lockett says, "Why can't I stop? We're on motorway." And just then, bus passed a sign and said, "Services 25 mile." Pierce says, "They's got no chance for you. They used to go when everybody else went." Old Grandad says, "Driver, stop this bus." But the driver apparently was deaf. So old Grandad went up to him. I wobbled down the coach, bumping into folks. I says, "That deaf or daft? Stop this bus, what? I'm busting." Driver says, late off boss till we get Stafford. I says, now go sit down. Our Grandad tried a different tack. I says, listen, Ark, I've got this condition. I says, and doctor says, as if I done a go lavatory regular like, I'll die. I says, and they was like have a dead man on the hands, was. Well, driver coded me a few names, and I said I'd come off motorway at next exit. So our Grandad says, well, give it some welly then, I can't last much longer. Well, nobody knew where they won, not even the driver. Well, I come off motorway, I went round a roundabout, through a village, and out into open country. And I pulled up by a brick wall was running alongside of the road. Driver says, he's got 8 a minute now, skedaddle. So our Grandad was off buzz almost before it had stopped. And I made a beeline for this woe, and I climbed over it. As I dropped down on the other side, I expected to find solid earth. Instead of that, all I found was fresh air. There was a wild yell, sparks off his fag, and a bloody great faraway splash. Well, everybody sat there dumbstruck. Bill Henschel says, what the bloody hell's I gone and done? One of the old women on the bus says, say that blue board there, don't it see British waterways on it? Well, gradually it dawned on him what had happened. The driver had stopped his coach smack on top of a canal bridge. And our Grandad Piggott had fun tight the hard way. Well, Bill Henschel was off buzz like a shot. I says, bring a light quick. Well, there was horrible gurgling noises coming from down below. Now, Bill, I could just make the canal out. Now, Grandad Piggott was bobbing around in Midland like a great black cork. And 8 or so wait trends were going like hell in the weed beds of the house. When they got him on the coach, I set him to that driver. Well, there was waiter running out for his ear holes, out for his neck. I says, you bloody puddle-headed scatterbrain, bloody corky-headed omagone, I says, I'm going to have they for this. And poor old driver didn't know what to do. Well, his fault. I'd been lucky out Grandad Piggott had. I'd been very lucky. If I hadn't landed in the waiter, I'd have been killed. There was no society. It was 40 foot down to that canal. Well, they got him on the backside of the bus and undressed him, and somebody lent a shirt, somebody else an overcoat, and they stuffed his clothes underneath it. Now, personal freshness was never out Grandad's strong point. And his trousers mixed with a bit of canal mud in a hay freak when that heater got going on them. Well, by the time they got one, they were more or less dry. I smelt a bit wrong for the next 2 or 3 weeks, how Grandad did. And when nobody had stand with him by the bar at the pub, I decided it was time to have a bath. Then I couldn't have turned the bloody taps on. Because it was that long since it'd been used. Marley, that's another story. I'll say thee.
Hi, gentlemen, please. Do your best with the glossing now.